My name is Patrick and I own a chain of 3 restaurants called Golden Fork here in Denver. 15 years ago, I started with one small establishment, and now I have 3 successful restaurants across Colorado. My wife Miranda always supported me in this business. She worked at a marketing agency and helped with advertising campaigns for our restaurants. Everything started 3 months ago when I noticed that Miranda had become different. Not in her appearance but in her behavior. She began staying late at work more often, became less talkative at home, and most importantly, stopped being interested in the affairs of our restaurants. Previously, she always asked about new customers, profits, expansion plans. Now it seemed like she absolutely didn't care about any of it. The first time I paid attention to her phone was a month ago. She always kept its screen down and quickly flipped it over when messages came in. This was strange because she had never hidden her conversations or correspondence from me before. We had been married for 12 years, and the trust between us seemed unshakable. But the strangest thing was that lately our restaurants had been receiving unexpected visits from the health inspection department. Not scheduled ones but sudden inspections. This cost us considerable money in fines for minor violations that no one had noticed before. At the same time, I heard from colleagues that some competing establishments, which had much worse conditions, somehow avoided such inspections. The turning point came 2 nights ago. Miranda took a shower and left her phone on the bed. It was unlocked, and a message from a contact named Dave Work was glowing on the screen. I knew Miranda didn't have a colleague named Dave because I had met her team many times. At first, I tried to convince myself that this was just a new client or partner. But when I saw the text of the message, "I miss you, beautiful. When will we meet again? Last night was incredible," my heart stopped. My hands were shaking when I opened their correspondence. What I saw turned my life upside down. This wasn't just ordinary cheating. This was an entire conspiracy against me and my business. Dave turned out to be David Morris, the chief inspector of the health department in our district. The person who was supposed to monitor compliance with standards in the restaurant business was instead taking bribes from my competitors and organizing illegal inspections of my establishments. And Miranda, my wife, wasn't just cheating on me with this man. She was actively helping him in this corruption scheme. From their correspondence, it became clear that she was providing him with insider information about our restaurants, work schedules, technological process details, even copies of internal documents. In return, David not only turned a blind eye to violations in competing establishments but also deliberately looked for problems in our restaurants. The worst part was that from the correspondence I understood, they were planning to use the accumulated violations in my restaurants to cause me serious trouble with licensing. The goal was simple: force me to sell the business for pennies, and then David would use his connections to help one of my competitors buy out my chain. But the biggest shock awaited me at the end. In one of the messages, Miranda wrote, "When Patrick finally realizes he's lost and sells his restaurants, we can start a new life with that money. I've already prepared divorce papers. I'm just waiting for the right moment." I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my wife's phone in my hands, and felt everything I had believed in for the last 12 years crumbling. Miranda wasn't just cheating on me. She was systematically destroying my business, my reputation, my life. And all this for money and a corrupt lover. At that moment, I made a decision. If she wanted to play such games, then I would show her what a real game was. I had 3 weeks until our wedding anniversary, which we traditionally celebrated with a big party with all our friends and business partners. This evening would be unforgettable. The next day I started preparing. First, I copied all their correspondence and all photos from Miranda's phone. Then I hired a private investigator who had to gather additional evidence of David's corruption scheme. At the same time, I installed hidden cameras in our house, in the bedroom, living room, and kitchen. The hardest part was acting with Miranda as if nothing had happened. Having breakfast with her every morning, talking about everyday affairs, kissing her on the cheek before leaving for work. All these 3 weeks were hell for me. But I had to endure it, the stakes were too high. Meanwhile, the detective provided me with stunning results. It turned out that David Morris had received bribes from 7 different restaurant chains over the past 2 years for a total amount of over $200,000. For this money, he not only turned a blind eye to serious violations but also fabricated reports about supposedly perfect conditions in these establishments. At the same time, my restaurants received fines totaling $80,000 for minor violations during this same period, most of which were either fabricated or such that were ignored in other establishments. Now I understood why my profits had been falling lately while competitors felt so confident. A week before the anniversary, I received the most valuable gift. The hidden cameras captured Miranda bringing David to our house. They not only cheated on me in my own bed but also discussed details of their plans to destroy my business. The recording clearly shows David telling Miranda about preparing the final blow, a large-scale inspection of all my restaurants with the aim of revoking their licenses. But what hurt me most was hearing Miranda laugh when David joked about how stupid and trusting I was. She said I was so focused on the business that I didn't notice what was happening right under my nose. They mocked me, calling me naive and saying I deserved everything that was happening to me. The day of our anniversary arrived. Miranda spent the whole day preparing for the party, getting her hair done, manicure, buying a new dress. She looked more beautiful than ever, and it became even more painful for me to realize that this beauty was planning to destroy my life. Guests started arriving at 7 in the evening. All our friends came, my business partners, restaurant employees, representatives of local media. I specifically invited them under the pretext of an important announcement about expanding the chain. About 70 people gathered in total. Miranda was the center of attention, telling guests about our happy 12 years together, about plans for the future. Looking at her, I could barely contain my emotions. But the hardest part was still ahead. At 9 in the evening, I asked for the guests' attention. Everyone gathered in the large living room. Miranda stood next to me, holding my hand. She was smiling and had no idea that in a few minutes her life would change forever. "Dear friends," I began, 12 years ago I married the most beautiful woman in Denver. She supported me in all my endeavors, helped build our business. But today I want to tell you the truth about what actually happened in recent months. Miranda looked at me in surprise, but was still smiling, thinking this would be a usual thank you speech. Recently, our restaurants have been under serious pressure from the health inspection department. Illegal inspections, fabricated fines, constant licensing problems. For a long time, I couldn't understand what was going on. But 3 weeks ago, everything became clear. I took out the remote and turned on the large TV. A photo of David Morris appeared on the screen. This is David Morris, Chief Inspector of the Health Department in our district. A person who was supposed to protect consumer interests, but instead was involved in corruption and racketeering. And helping him with this was my wife Miranda. The room fell silent. Miranda turned white as a sheet and sharply pulled her hand away from mine. Screenshots of their correspondence began appearing on the screen. Guests read messages where Miranda transmitted confidential information about my restaurants to David, and he promised to close the issue with competitors for a certain payment. But that's not all, I continued. They weren't just involved in corruption. They were doing this in my own house, in my own bed. A video from the hidden camera appeared on the screen. Miranda and David in our bedroom, their intimate conversations, plans to destroy my restaurants. Guests started murmuring indignantly. Someone turned off the sound on their phone to record all this on video. Miranda rushed to the TV trying to turn it off, but I held the remote. "Patrick, stop this. You don't understand what you're doing," she screamed. "I understand better than ever," I replied calmly. "I understand that for the last few months I lived with a woman who planned to destroy everything I had worked on for 15 years. I understand that I trusted a person who sold me for money." Evidence continued appearing on the screen. Bank statements from David's accounts showing suspicious amounts from owners of competing restaurants, photos from their meetings, recordings of phone conversations. Suddenly, 3 men in suits entered the living room. These were police officers whom I had called in advance. "David Morris, you are under arrest on suspicion of corruption, abuse of office, and organizing a criminal scheme," said one of them, putting handcuffs on David right in the middle of the party. The guests were in shock. Media representatives filmed everything on cameras. Miranda was crying and begging me to stop everything, but it was too late. "And now, dear wife," I addressed Miranda, "you wanted a divorce? Here's your divorce. Tomorrow morning my lawyer will file documents with the court. You'll get exactly what you're entitled to under our prenuptial agreement. Absolutely nothing because you violated the fidelity clause." But I wasn't finished yet. On the screen appeared more evidence that I had been saving for the finale. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see what kind of person I lived with for 12 years, I said and clicked the remote again. The screen showed Miranda's messages where she discussed with David not just business matters, but also personal details about me. She mocked my habits, told him intimate details of our marriage, shared information about my health problems and financial concerns. She called me boring, said our marriage was dead, and that she stayed with me only because of money and social status. In one particularly painful message she wrote to David, "Patrick is so pathetic. He works 16 hours a day thinking he's building something great, but he doesn't realize that his own wife is destroying everything from within. Sometimes I feel sorry for him, But then I remember how much money we'll have when this is all over. The guests gasped. Some of my friends who had known us for years looked at Miranda with disgust. My business partners, who had always respected her, shook their heads in disappointment. But the most devastating evidence was yet to come. I clicked the remote one more time, and audio recordings began playing, conversations between Miranda and David where they discussed specific plans to frame me. "We need to make sure Patrick gets a big fine for food safety violations," David's voice sounded through the speakers. "I'll arrange an inspection next week, and you'll make sure the freezer temperature is off by a few degrees." "What if he fixes it before you arrive?" Miranda's voice asked. "Don't worry, I'll come unannounced. And if everything looks perfect, I'll find something else. Maybe expired products that I'll plant myself." The room erupted. Some guests started shouting, others took out their phones to record. Miranda tried to run toward the exit, but the police officers stopped her. "This is not over yet," I announced loudly. "I want everyone to know that this corruption scheme affected not just my restaurants, but many honest businesses in our city." David Morris took bribes totaling over $200,000 from 7 different restaurant chains. He fabricated health violations in dozens of establishments while protecting those who paid him. I turned to the media representatives. "I have all the evidence, bank records, audio recordings, documents. This is the biggest corruption scandal in Denver's restaurant industry in the past decade." The party turned into a press conference. Journalists asked questions. Business owners who had suffered from David's corrupt practices shared their stories. Some revealed that they had suspected something was wrong but were afraid to speak up. Miranda sat in the corner, crying and trying to call someone on her phone. But it was too late. The scandal was already spreading on social media. Videos from the party were being shared thousands of times, and news outlets were picking up the story. The police took David away and Miranda packed her things that night. She tried to explain that it was all a mistake, that she loved me, that David had forced her. But I no longer wanted to hear anything. 12 years, Miranda," I said as she stood at the door with her suitcase. 12 years I gave you everything I had. I worked day and night to build this business, to give you a comfortable life. And you repaid me by trying to destroy everything I had worked for. Patrick, please let me explain," she begged. "There's nothing to explain. You made your choice when you decided to betray not just me but everything we built together. You chose money over love, corruption over honesty. Now live with the consequences." That was the last time I saw Miranda. She left that night and never returned to our house. The next morning, the whole story was in the news. Corruption scandal in Denver's restaurant business. Wife helped corrupt lover destroy husband's business. Restaurant owner stages epic revenge on cheating wife. Social networks exploded with discussions. But the media attention was just the beginning. Within days, the story went viral nationally. News channels picked it up, podcasts discussed it, and it became a cautionary tale about corruption and betrayal. I received interview requests from major networks, but I declined most of them, preferring to let the evidence speak for itself. The investigation that followed revealed the full extent of the corruption scheme. It turned out that David Morris had been taking bribes for over 3 years, not just 2 as I initially thought. The total amount exceeded $400,000. He had a network of informants in various businesses who provided him with inside information in exchange for favorable inspection reports. Miranda's role was more extensive than I had realized. She wasn't just providing information about my restaurants, she was actively recruiting other business owners' spouses and employees to join the scheme. She had created a whole network of people who were betraying their own employers for money. The evidence I provided led to the arrest of 12 people, including David and 5 other health department employees. It was the largest corruption bust in Colorado's history. A week later, David was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was fired from his job, lost his pension, and was ordered to pay compensation to all affected businesses, including mine. But the sentence felt hollow. 10 years couldn't undo the damage he had caused to dozens of honest business owners. Miranda lost her job. No one wanted to work with someone who had betrayed her own husband for money. Her marketing agency fired her immediately after the scandal broke, and she became unemployable in the industry. She had to move to another state, to her sister's place, where she tried to start over under a different name. But the consequences for Miranda went beyond just losing her job. The prenuptial agreement we had signed 12 years ago was ironclad. In case of adultery, the guilty party forfeited all rights to marital property. Miranda left with nothing, no money, no assets, not even the right to alimony. Her family disowned her. Her parents, who had always been proud of their daughter's successful marriage, were ashamed of what she had done. Her sister took her in reluctantly and made it clear that it was temporary. Miranda's friends abandoned her one by one as the details of her betrayal became public. The social media reaction was particularly brutal. Videos of the anniversary party had been viewed millions of times. Miranda's name became synonymous with betrayal and greed. People created memes about her, and her image was used as an example of the worst kind of gold digger. But the best was yet to come. A month after the scandal, two competing restaurants whose owners had paid bribes to David lost their licenses due to genuine inspections by the new health department leadership. They had to urgently sell their businesses. The first restaurant was Milano's, an Italian place that had been my biggest competitor for years. The owner, Tony Milano, had paid David over $50,000 in bribes to overlook serious health violations. When new inspectors arrived, they found rodent infestations, expired ingredients, and equipment that hadn't been cleaned in months. The restaurant was shut down immediately. The second was Sakura Sushi, a Japanese restaurant that had somehow maintained a perfect health record despite numerous customer complaints about food poisoning. It turned out the owner had been paying David $30,000 annually to ensure favorable inspection reports. The new investigation revealed that they were serving fish that was days past its expiration date and using contaminated water in their preparation. Both owners were desperate to sell quickly to avoid criminal prosecution. I bought Milano's for 60% of its real value and Sakura Sushi for 50%. The locations were prime real estate in downtown Denver, and I had always envied their foot traffic. My restaurant chain Golden Fork now consisted of 5 establishments instead of 3. Profits increased by 150%, and my reputation didn't suffer. On the contrary, people respected me for having the courage to fight corruption, even when it involved my own wife. The transformation of the two acquired restaurants was challenging but rewarding. Milano's became Golden Fork Italian, and I kept some of their popular dishes while improving the quality and safety standards. Sakura Sushi became Golden Fork Asian Fusion, combining Japanese, Thai, and Chinese cuisines. The former employees of both restaurants were grateful to keep their jobs. Many of them had known about the health violations but were afraid to speak up for fear of losing their jobs. Under new management, they felt secure and motivated to maintain high standards. The financial benefits were enormous. Not only did I acquire 2 profitable locations at below-market prices, but the publicity from the scandal brought customers to all my restaurants. People wanted to support the business owner who had stood up to corruption, even at great personal cost. 6 months have passed since that evening. I still live alone in our large house, but I no longer mourn for Miranda. She made her choice and now she lives with the consequences. David is serving his sentence in prison, and I'm building new restaurants. Sometimes friends ask if I feel sorry for Miranda, if I wasn't too harsh with her. I always answer the same way: she planned to destroy 15 years of my work for money and a criminal lover. She got exactly what she deserved. The house feels different now. I've redecorated the bedroom, replaced all the furniture that reminded me of Miranda. The hidden cameras are gone, I don't need them anymore. The space that once echoed with betrayal now reflects my newfound independence. I've started dating again, though carefully. The experience with Miranda taught me to pay attention to red flags and to trust my instincts. I'm not bitter about love or marriage, but I'm certainly more cautious about whom I trust with my heart and my business. The restaurant business has become more transparent since the scandal. The new health department leadership implemented stricter oversight procedures and anonymous reporting systems. Other business owners who had suffered under David's corrupt regime came forward with their stories, leading to additional reforms. I've become something of a local hero in the business community. Other entrepreneurs seek my advice on dealing with corruption and protecting their interests. I've spoken at several business conferences about the importance of vigilance and the courage to stand up to wrongdoing. The media attention has mostly died down, though the story still surfaces occasionally in discussions about corruption and betrayal. I've learned to live with the fact that this chapter of my life is now public record, but I don't regret my decision to expose the truth. Looking back, I realize that Miranda's betrayal, while devastating at the time, ultimately made me stronger and more successful. I learned that I could handle the worst kind of personal and professional crisis and come out victorious. The pain of betrayal has faded, but the lessons remain. Miranda occasionally tries to contact me through mutual acquaintances or social media, but I've blocked all communication. She's attempted to apologize, claiming that she was manipulated by David and that she still loves me. But some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. I've heard through the grapevine that she's struggling in her new life. She works at a small marketing firm for a fraction of her previous salary and lives in a modest apartment. David's imprisonment left her alone and unemployed, with no resources and a reputation that preceded her wherever she went. There's no satisfaction in her suffering. I've moved beyond the need for revenge. But there is a sense of justice in knowing that actions have consequences, and that betrayal ultimately punishes the betrayer more than the betrayed. The divorce was finalized 3 months after that memorable anniversary party. Miranda received nothing, no money, no property, not even the right to alimony. The prenuptial contract we had signed 12 years ago clearly stated, in case of adultery, the guilty party has no right to any compensation. My lawyer, who had drafted that prenuptial agreement, later told me it was one of the most satisfying cases of his career. He had seen too many situations where unfaithful spouses managed to manipulate the system and walk away with significant settlements. In this case, justice was clear and swift. The business continues to grow. I'm planning to open a 6th location next year, and I've received offers to franchise the Golden Fork brand. The scandal that could have destroyed me instead became the foundation for unprecedented success. I've learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can lead to the best outcomes. Miranda's betrayal forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, love, and business. It made me more discerning, more strategic, and ultimately more successful. The employees at all 5 restaurants respect me more now. They saw how I handled the crisis with dignity and determination, and they know they work for someone who values honesty and integrity above all else. Morale is high, turnover is low, and customer satisfaction has never been better. I sleep well at night now, knowing that I'm surrounded by honest people and that my business is built on solid foundations. The anxiety and suspicion that plagued me during those final months with Miranda are gone, replaced by confidence and peace of mind. Now I know, trust is the most valuable thing that can exist between people. When you lose it, you lose everything. But sometimes the destruction of an old life gives you the opportunity to build a new, better one. The story of my betrayal and revenge has become a cautionary tale in business circles and beyond. It's been featured in podcasts about infidelity, discussed in business ethics courses, and used as an example in legal seminars about prenuptial agreements. I've received letters from people around the country who found themselves in similar situations. Some sought advice on how to handle spousal betrayal, others wanted to share their own stories of overcoming adversity. I try to respond to as many as I can, offering encouragement and practical advice based on my experience. The most rewarding letters come from business owners who used my story as inspiration to stand up to corruption in their own industries. Knowing that my painful experience helped others fight injustice gives meaning to what I went through. Miranda's legacy is now permanently tied to betrayal and corruption. Her name appears in articles about business ethics, relationship trust, and the consequences of greed. She will forever be remembered not for her marketing skills or her beauty, but for her willingness to destroy the person who loved her most. David Morris, meanwhile, has become a cautionary tale in law enforcement and regulatory circles. His case is studied in ethics training for government employees, and new oversight procedures were implemented specifically to prevent similar corruption schemes. The ripple effects of that one evening continue to spread. The restaurant industry in Denver is cleaner and more competitive. Business owners feel safer knowing that corruption will be exposed and punished. The health department operates with greater transparency and accountability. As for me, I found peace in knowing that I stood up for what was right, even when it cost me everything I thought I valued. I lost a wife and gained integrity. I lost trust and gained wisdom. I lost innocence and gained strength. The house that once echoed with laughter and love now resonates with a different kind of satisfaction. The quiet contentment of a man who knows he did the right thing, regardless of the personal cost. The empty spaces where Miranda's belongings once sat are now filled with awards from business organizations, photos with civic leaders, and mementos from the successful restaurants I've built. Sometimes, late at night, I walk through the house and remember the good times Miranda and I shared. But those memories no longer bring pain, they're simply chapters in a story that led me to where I am today. A story of betrayal, yes, but ultimately a story of triumph over adversity and the power of truth over deception. Thank you for watching this video. I see that 99% of you are still watching videos without subscribing to the channel. Perhaps YouTube will no longer offer videos from this channel in the future, so I recommend subscribing. This will also allow me to see what stories you are interested in, which will motivate me to release new videos. Also, keep writing in the comments what stories you would like to hear. I try to read all the comments and choose topics for videos that appeal to the maximum number of subscribers. Now you have a playlist on your screen where you can find more stories that were released before you found this channel. You can also go to the channel and watch them there.